Are US bases far beyond the Middle East now on Mojtaba's radar? As Iran signals it may no longer confine its targets to Trump's regional footprint alone? Is Tehran preparing to unleash long-range missiles on targets outside the Middle East, widening the war just as Washington bets on pressure to force Iran to stand down? As Trump threatens more strikes, a close Mojtaba aide issues a chilling warning that Iran's retaliation could soon reach American assets well beyond the current battlefront. Iranian MP Ali Khazarian claimed that Tehran has begun targeting US bases beyond the immediate region, suggesting Iran is widening the geographic scope of its response against Washington. He alleged that these overseas bases are being used to plan future attacks against Iran, framing them as legitimate military targets rather than distant support hubs. The lawmaker further claimed that the United States has lost 16 regional bases during the war, portraying this as evidence that American infrastructure in and around the Middle East has been severely degraded. Khazarian described Iran's strikes on Jordan as a defensive and deterrent response, arguing that Tehran is acting to prevent further attacks rather than to start a broader conflict. He also accused Jordan of allowing US forces to use its airspace and military facilities, implying that this cooperation made Jordan a party to hostile actions and thus a target for Iranian retaliation. Trump warned on June 10 that the United States will launch renewed strikes against Iran, signaling that Washington is prepared to continue military action rather than pause for negotiations.
I've been working with Iran for a number of months, and they should sign their deal. It's a good deal. It doesn't give them the right to have a nuclear weapon. In fact, it totally prohibits them from ever having a nuclear weapon. And it was just tap, tap, tap. I don't know what they're doing. So they then shot at our helicopter, very expensive helicopter, by the way, but much more importantly, the two men, fortunately, they're okay. But an amazing rescue. If you ever get a clip, you won't believe the rescue, how cool it was. The equipment we have. Look, we have the strongest military in the world. And I gave them a break at the request of Pakistan. The Field Marshal and the Prime Minister of Pakistan are great. We stopped them from going to war with India. You would have had a nuclear war if it wasn't for me. But they became friendly to me, very friendly, and they're close to Iran, and they worked, and they still are working on trying them to do what's right. But we want a deal that's meaningful. We want a deal that works. We don't want to just have a Barack Hussein Obama deal, JCPOA, the worst deal. That was a path to a nuclear. It's the exact opposite. You know, I like on television, they say, oh, they should have kept that deal. First of all, it was over. It was a short-term deal. But that deal was a path to a nuclear weapon. This is a path against a nuclear. You can't have a nuclear weapon. His was a path to a nuclear weapon. They were developing during his administration nuclear weapon. If they had a nuclear weapon, there'd be no Israel, there'd be no Middle East, and they would have absolutely shot at us. So we'll see what happens. But we hit them hard yesterday, and we're going to hit them again hard today, in case you miss it, in case you don't turn on your television set. And we'll see what happens with the deal. We were really close to a deal, but they keep tapping us along. They keep playing us for suckers because, you know what? They dealt with some very stupid precedents. I have to say that. I'm embarrassed to say it.
The IRGC releases dramatic footage of the downing of an MQ-9 drone, showcasing the moment a high-value US asset is tracked, targeted, and destroyed in Gulf skies. On camera, Mojtaba's forces blow Trump's drone into smithereens, turning the strike into a visual message that American surveillance hardware is no longer untouchable over Iran's front yard. Iran takes revenge after US self-defense strikes near the Strait of Hormuz, insisting it is responding to American attacks with direct hits on US military platforms. The Revolutionary Guards say multiple American facilities were targeted as Tehran expands its response across the region. Iran claims a coordinated operation struck key US military positions stretching across the Gulf and beyond. The latest exchange marks one of the most significant escalations since the current US-Iran confrontation began. Tehran says American bases across several countries are now within the scope of its expanding retaliation. Iran claims strategic US military assets were targeted as fears grow of a wider regional conflict. Tehran is signaling that any new American strikes could trigger even broader attacks across the region. IRGC statement read, and I quote, "Four important targets were hit at the airbase and command center of the child-killing American army in Al-Azraq, Jordan. Following the successful operation of the IRGC Navy in hitting 21 targets in American air and naval bases in the region and shooting down an MQ-9 drone in the skies of Jam County, and in view of the enemy's continued mischief, in completing the retaliatory operation, the forces of Islam and the brave fighters of the IRGC Aerospace Force, using their long-range solid-fuel missiles, targeted and destroyed 4 important targets, including the hangars of F-35 fighter jets at the airbase and command center of the child-killing American Army in Al-Azraq, Jordan. Our forces are ready for a crushing and decisive response to any renewed aggression by the enemy, and the consequences of any renewed aggression will be the responsibility of the American enemy." Unquote. Meanwhile, reports emerged of fresh attacks targeting U.S. military bases in Bahrain and Kuwait, signaling a further escalation in the rapidly widening confrontation. Iran claims its latest retaliatory strike directly targeted the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, marking a major escalation in the Gulf confrontation. The IRGC is warning that American military installations across the Middle East remain vulnerable if Washington continues its military campaign against Iran. Iran says its retaliation extended beyond Bahrain, with missile and drone attacks also targeting U.S. military facilities in Kuwait. Tehran claims long-range missiles struck key targets at the Al-Azraq airbase in Jordan, where American forces maintain a strategic presence. Iran has vowed a crushing response to any further U.S. attacks, signaling that its retaliatory campaign could widen across the region if tensions continue to rise. Iran International Report said, and I quote, "Iran's Revolutionary Guard said they struck 4 key targets at the U.S. Al-Azraq airbase in Jordan, including what they described as F-35 fighter shelters and a command and control center." In a statement carried by Fast News, the IRGC said the attack was part of a continuing retaliatory operation following earlier strikes by its naval forces on U.S. facilities in the region and the reported downing of a U.S. MQ-9 drone over Bushehr province. The Guard said their aerospace force used long-range solid-fuel missiles to target and destroy 4 sites at the base. The IRGC warned that Iranian forces remain prepared to deliver a decisive and crushing response to any further attacks and said responsibility for the consequences of future military action would rest with the United States. Unquote. Iran has warned Washington of consequences after U.S. strikes near the Strait of Hormuz, vowing retaliation and raising fears of a wider regional conflict. After President Trump ordered retaliatory strikes over the downing of a U.S. Apache helicopter, Tehran responded with fresh threats and military action, escalating tensions across the Gulf. As CENTCOM wrapped up its strikes against Iranian targets, Tehran claimed to have launched attacks on U.S. bases, signaling that the confrontation is far from over. U.S. CENTCOM statement read, and I quote, "U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, forces completed self-defense strikes against Iran, June 9th, at the Commander-in-Chief's direction in response to yesterday's downing of a U.S. Army Apache helicopter. CENTCOM forces struck Iranian air defense, ground control stations, and surveillance radar sites near the Strait of Hormuz with precision munitions from U.S. Air Force and Navy fighter jets. The operation was a proportional response to recent attacks on U.S. forces and international commercial ships transiting regional waters. U.S. forces remain vigilant and postured to defend against unjustified Iranian aggression." Unquote. While CENTCOM says its operation is complete, Iran's Revolutionary Guard has signaled that its response is only beginning, with U.S. military bases across the region now firmly in its sights. Iran's Qatam al-Anbiya Central HQ statement read, and I quote, "In response to the aggression of the terrorist American army in areas of southern Iran under the false pretext of their helicopter crashing, several U.S. bases in the region have been targeted by a powerful assault from the heroic army of the Islamic Republic of Iran and the brave warriors of the IRGC. The criminal U.S. Army should know that if it repeats any aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran, more severe and extensive strikes will be carried out against the designated target bank in the region." Unquote.